or good afternoon or evening, and we have a nice panel of speakers who are in quite a few places. So we hope that you're going to find this useful and interesting. First of all, to give everyone some context, we're going to get each of our speakers just to say hello, what their name is and what their background is, and then we're going to talk through the topics. So I guess first up, maybe we go from top left, which is Marcelo. If you can say hi and who you are and what you do.
Hi, everyone. Good morning for me, good afternoon, or good evening for everybody else. My name is Marcelo Miranda. I am from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. My company is called Finchain, and we are a one-stop shop for everything related to blockchain, crypto, DeFi in the Brazilian region. We have projects of creating new crypto tokenizing assets, also trading and developing algorithms for trading, and also training and consulting for startups, banks, companies in general in Brazil. My background is not technical. I'm actually graduating in economics and with an MBA in the University of Michigan in the United States. And I'm very glad to be here with this great panel. I'm happy to discuss everything related to DeFi, CBDC, and blockchain.
Awesome, thank you. So maybe Ava?
Sure, thank you so much, Simon. Thank you for the opportunity to be on this panel. My name is Ava Chaki. I'm the Executive Director of the Hunt Institute for Engineering and Humanity at Southern Methodist University, which is in Dallas, Texas. I'm also the co-founder of the Inclusive Economy Consortium and the president of Fintech for Good. My background is also not in technology, even though my work over the past 25 years have always centered around technology. My work focuses on building and fostering a climate smart and inclusive economy. And therefore, it is very much focused on various disadvantaged and under-resourced groups and SMEs, small and micro businesses. And in terms of the educational background, I have a master's in finance and a PhD in public policy.
Cool, thank you, Ava. So next is it Jiang?
Jiaying.
Jiaying, sorry.
Thank you, Simon. My name is Jiaying, last name Jiang. I'm a Hauser Global Fellow at NYU Law right now, and also working on law and tech related research. And I have two additional projects. One is on CBDC, cooperating with China Center at Yale Law School, and also a contributor of the RegChat initiative, which is a law and blockchain initiative at the Codex, Stanford Law School. My background, legal background, and I made it to practice law in the state of New York and also China. I think that's it. No technical background though.
Okay, perfect. And I think it's important to have people that can communicate as well as the developers. 2017, 2018, there was a lot of noise around blockchain and what it could do, and maybe a lot of hype. So 2 years later, or even 3, if we consider the Gartner hype curve in terms of getting very excited about things and then disillusionment, but people actually working to build things. Where do you feel we are on that Gartner hype curve in terms of blockchain, DeFi, and CBDC? And what are you excited about? And maybe if we go top left, Jiaying, I'm going to get it right.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Well, I think over the past few months, definitely DeFi has increased in activity and also popularity. So do NFTs. And a few weeks ago, when I saw an article, an author turning his New York Times column into an NFT and put up for auction, and it was sold for $560,000. Well, that's fun to see, but whether NFTs is the next frontier in trading or in kind of a new form of tulip, I think it's still subject to debate. I'm being very cautious in this space, and I think other panelists will shed more light on this topic. But I think today I would like to focus more on CBDC because it's one of my research projects. Yeah, I think according to the most recent BIS survey, Bank for International Settlement, the vast majority of central banks, like 86%, are exploring CBDCs, either retail CBDC or wholesale CBDC. Central banks are more, I would say, they are more aware of the benefit and cost of a CBDC and the necessity or possibility of issuing CBDC. Different countries may be at different stages, I would say, in terms of the development. For example, Bahamas has launched its own version of CBDC, and the UK and the US are still studying CBDC, debating if a UK version of CBDC, like digital euro, or a US version of CBDC is needed. While in China, I would say China started research in 2014 and has expanded pilot programs in many cities over the past few months. And the PBOC, which is China's central bank, People's Bank of China, has been working with partners like commercial banks, restaurants, retail stores, etc. The most recent development or trial was in October 2020. The PBOC distributed about 10 million eCNY. By the way, eCNY is China's CBDC. In a kind of a digital red pocket to Shenzhen residents, about 50,000 Shenzhen residents, and residents could use this eCNY, can spend it at over 3,000 restaurants and retail stores. And this week-long trial ended with 8.8 million eCNY being spent in over 62,000 transactions. So I think that's something very exciting because the general public can have a sense of, how a CBDC look like, how it works, and how it's different from existing payment platforms. That's something very exciting.
Okay, cool. So from Brazil, Marcelo, what's your perspective on this? Where are we on the hype curve?
Well, the hype curve, Simon, I think we passed, I forgot the technical term on the Gartner curve, but the crossing the desert or the bottom, I think we passed that. I think the hype was, from my perspective, and I started my company, I started learning about crypto 2013, so I wasn't one of the original gangsters, but I was definitely early, especially for Brazil. So I believe we did have a big hype there. It's not that I believe, it's clear with getting to the prices that we got in crypto early on, the ICOs, the DAOs, and everything. So for me, that was the first peak of that Gartner curve. And then we crossed the desert from 2018, 2019, part of 2020, and now I think we're coming back on that upward slope with projects that are more sound in terms of technology, in terms of business concepts, more robust. Obviously, there's always hype. As we're seeing with the NFTs, there's with everything else, there's going to be stuff that just busts, but there's going to be useful stuff coming from this as well. But I do believe we are on a more consistent part of that curve. So I'm very excited about the next couple years because we do see. The institutional players now coming into crypto, happening in the US already, happening in Europe, parts of Asia. I think we're going to see that in the emerging countries next. And obviously, being in an emerging country like Brazil, we very excited about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And like you say, it's actually been around longer than people realize. So yeah, I think that's good. Thank you. And how about you, Ava?
So from my perspective and considering the work that I'm doing, I feel that the hype has been sort of narrow, and we definitely have had a lot of hype around cryptocurrencies and NFT, but the space that I'm most interested in, which is really the applications of blockchain for SDGs, towards the Sustainable Development Goals, I don't think we have seen that much hype. I think we could really use some hype. I think blockchain in some ways have a bit of a PR problem, because in the public consciousness, the kinds of applications that are better known are not really the ones that have those kinds of social and environmental impact. And so from my angle, I would love to see a little bit more hype happening in the future with respect to those applications.
And I guess while that's true, the United Nations does have a good, like there's an Irish company that helped AidTech to help to use blockchain to do relief payments and shipments to make sure it was done with less corruption to the Sudan. So in some ways, the United Nations has been quite a positive organization in terms of showing interesting use cases for it. But like you say, you still have to communicate that and explain to people what you've done. So yeah, like you say, they can do more.
I completely agree. Sorry, I completely agree, Simon. I think that's exactly the point, is that we do have some of these really promising pilot use cases, but they are not in the public consciousness. So I think having more hype and awareness around them, I think, could be very useful.
Yeah, definitely. And there's another one with Oxfam in Vanuatu using blockchain to help reach the unbanked as well. But like you say, if people don't know about that, they don't see the value. So look, I guess this is good, fine, because this leads into the next question, which is what are the challenges that we face to achieve the things? And well, maybe we start with you, Ava, because I mean, you can expand on challenges can be communicational, challenges can be logistical, or over to you.
Yes. So from my angle, the challenges that I see is, in part, again, the lack of public consciousness around this topic. And you do have a number of institutions, the UN, and the UN system as a whole actually is doing some really interesting things. FAO, even IFAD. So these various institutions, international organizations that are part of the extended UN system, have been funding and piloting some very interesting use cases. But the awareness of them and the potential of blockchain for environmental and social good have been very, very limited in my experience. And so from our angle, we have been trying to do some work around this, but I think it really would take a concerted effort, and it leads to one of my points about barriers and challenges, which is that the ecosystem is not very cohesive. I think there is a lot of ecosystem work that we need to do and connect more dots, so that there is more of there is an ability for people to connect these possibilities and raise awareness around them. But in general, I find that there is a knowledge gap, and that knowledge gap needs to be addressed. And again, it will take an ecosystem approach for us to do that. And in many cases, we have a technology gap. So some of the potential beneficiaries are suffering from lack of access to appropriate technologies, which again will take a whole other set of solutions and interventions to address. And finally, what I'd like to say is that on the policy side, there is a lot that could be done through policy. And right now, I feel that when we think of policy, I like to use a broad definition that is not only law, but also incentives much more broadly, and not necessarily only by government, but by various institutions that can be well positioned to put these kinds of incentives into the ecosystem. And so I think a significant challenge right now is, because of the lack of awareness and lack of knowledge, there isn't really a systematic policy support for these high impact areas.
Awesome. Cool. Very good. Thanks. Good answer. Marcelo?
I do agree with Eva and I do think there are silos and there are gaps on knowledge and lack of policy. In Brazil, we see that for sure. We do see a push. Our current central bank president is very keen on blockchain, which is good. So they are doing stuff. But the main challenge, in my view, is definitely the regulatory gray area that most things, blockchain, crypto, DeFi, end up in our region. So I'm very excited about DeFi. It's one of my main focus areas right now for our company. And in Brazil, there is a clear need for that, for kind of taking the concentration from the financial system and reducing that. And DeFi and blockchain can be a good tool for that. But unfortunately, we still have regulations that were made even before the internet. So most of the times there's a gray area, and you have to make a decision whether you're going to take the risk as an entrepreneur and run with it and end up having problems later, or the other alternative is not to innovate, not do anything, and just go with the status quo, which obviously crypto, blockchain, people don't like doing. So at the end of the day, without clear regulations, things just cannot go too far. And that's a problem in Brazil, and I see it's a problem in most countries.
Yeah, look, definitely. Otherwise, it's Wild West, and you have to have that degree of protection for best practice and to build confidence. And finally, our third speaker, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree with two panelists. And in the CBDC space, there are also a lot of challenges. For example, let's say take China's CBDC as an example. If it's widely adopted in China, there will be a lot of like privacy concerns, due process concerns, and also the uncertainty of data use, data access, and data usage. For example, the PBOC, China's central bank, theoretically will have complete access to transaction information of every CBDC users, because theoretically, because a lot of technical details remain close to the public. So my analysis is based on publicly available information and then the chance to talk to people there. So theoretically, it has central bank has the capacity to clear all transactions, and it seems clear that other agencies will need access to this information. For example, law enforcement, tax authority, and other like intermediaries. But it's not clear how they will get access to the information, although there are already existing rules detailing the sharing of government information among government agencies. But their specific applicability to eCNY remain unclear. And in addition, intermediaries like Alipay or WeChat Pay would, or other commercial banks would involved in the deployment of eCNY, they also have to access at least some information involved in eCNY transaction. But their rights and responsibilities regarding this information remain unclear. And also another concern is, or challenge it is widespread adoption of eCNY could allow for greater government insight and control of individual transaction at a very micro level in real time, and that could potentially monitor and control every transaction. That might also raise some concerns too, and those are the challenges that I can think about right now.
Yeah, look, definitely, yeah, and like you say, it's that balance between privacy, efficiency, and then who has your data and what they do with it. So with what you've articulated, the next question is what could good look like? And if you had a magic wand or the ability to just make things happen, what would you do? And if things went well, where might we be if things progress positively? Who'd like to start first? So Ava.
Oh, thank you, Simon. That's a huge question. I see so many exciting opportunities, and I think if I could, I would have that magic wand. I think one of the low-hanging fruits, at least in terms of appeal and potential application, is in the fintech area. Fintech, decentralized finance. There are so many people out there, billions of people who are unbanked, and we don't hear enough about it. That we tend to focus more on emerging markets, but currently living in the US and working with communities here, it is mind-boggling how difficult it is for small businesses to get financing, to the point where I'm working with some organizations that represent under-resourced entrepreneurs, people of color, veterans. They have a hard time getting a few $1,000s of credit line for their businesses. So I do believe that perhaps the lowest hanging fruit in many ways is fintech and access to financing. And so if I had that magic wand, I would put a very concerted effort behind that. Policy, again, regulations are obviously barriers, but just convince stakeholders. In our work, that has been such an effective way of approaching the problems that we currently have in the blockchain space, that it just convene all the key stakeholders around the table and have the dialogues and the consultations around what's possible and what would it take to get there. And then I would follow with some of the other high potential areas. I mean, there is so many, whether we are thinking of supply chain, smart contracts, even in the education space, I'm seeing some really interesting solutions that can be very empowering to individuals and even businesses that come from a less privileged situation. And so, but from my angle, I would focus on access to finance first, that would very systematically support small businesses, and then riding that awareness and knowledge created and partnerships and coalitions created, I would then move on to various other areas. Again, I have a bias, but obviously I would focus on the ones that have the highest impact on micro and small businesses, because at the end of the day, they are the ones that are creating the majority of jobs, globally speaking.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Okay. Who'd like to go next? Marcelo.
I can go. I'm actually going with access as well, perhaps in a slightly different way.
Okay.
Yes, our region in general is not very equal, not like in terms of equal opportunities and equal information access. So we do see that if you talk to people that went to universities, people that have a job and speak some English, they do get it. Like they are getting now, right? They understand blockchain now. They understand DeFi a little bit. They understand crypto. They understand the needs of this technology. But that's a very limited elite, right? I mean, if we look into Brazil or any other country in the Latin American region, it's to get to the hearts of the broad population where you're really going to have an impact. We need more access, we need more awareness, and we need to make sure that they have access to the technology, and that's something that is still a challenge. So if I had the power, I would come up with something that will turn this in a quick second.
Cool. Okay. And Jiang?
Yeah. I would say one coin always has two sides, right? Nothing is 100% perfectly good. Technological innovation, is born or is created to solve some problems, but unavoidably it comes with some drawbacks, like concerns I said about ECDY. The good part about it is if ECDY is widely adopted in China, yes, maybe consumers could enjoy a faster, safer payment system. And those who are unbanked, like Eva just said, unbanked or underbanked, may be able to, enjoy financial services like people in metropolitan cities do. And from government standpoint, ECDY may help combat some financial crimes like money laundering or tax evasion. But the key is you need to overcome those challenges. In terms of what assumption, if I'm the leader, what am I going to do? I would say cooperation is the key, both in domestically and internationally. For example, domestically, you need to disclosure is the key. You need to give transparency to the general public and to other parties who can play a role in this system. For example, ECDY, the design is two-tier. The second tier distributors, including commercial banks and other financial entities. I think it would be unwise to disintermediate those second tier distributors. You need to include them in the system and then constantly consult with them, and then have their participation would be great. And also internationally, I would say constantly work with international partners to explore, let's say, cross-border payment system, or to discuss the interoperability issues. That would be good for the both for the purpose of financial stability and also the purpose of providing financial service to more people, especially who are in disadvantage. I think that's the key cooperation.
Yeah, and that's the whole value of the unbanked, and using the technology to be able to reach a wider range of people, which in itself should be bringing benefit to more people. So that sounds like a good idea. So my follow-up question then for each of you is what projects do you feel are good examples? And when people talk to you and you explain and to showcase examples to show them why this can have a massive impact, which projects do you feel are the ones that you would recommend others? And are there any particular parts of the world that we should be watching? Marcelo, you would like to take this first?
Definitely. So we do have a couple good examples. I'll just mention one that is not ours, but it's our clients. Mm-hmm. These guys from Moss, they created one of the first, I'm not sure if it was the first, but one of the first tokenized carbon credits globally, but focus on the Brazilian region, especially in the Amazon rainforest, where we're having a lot of problems in terms of deforestation, just kind of illegal activities of woods, smuggling, things like that. So the whole idea of the token is to sort of give some income to the landowners that don't get stimulated to actually cut their forests, right? Cut down their woods. So they had they created the token that had the whole idea. They did have the contact with these landowners. It could be indigenous reserve places, or even like sort of people in these rural areas where they have no access to technology or anything. So they needed to get their token out there. So we do have a crypto exchange called FlowBTC in our group, and we were the first exchange to say, okay, we will take that shot and we'll try to give people access to your token, so people can actually compensate their carbon footprints by buying their token and then redeeming it. So this has become a major project in Brazil, and also starting to be something global, and we're very proud of this because it's sort of the whole. It impacts the whole chain, right? Both like people in these rural areas with no access, people who will have no ways of offsetting their carbon footprints can now have this method for doing it, and companies as well. So it's we're very proud of being part of this project. It's called moss.earth, if anyone wants to check it out.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's really good. I think it's great to have actual examples. Jiang, how about you?
Yes, I think a few projects. One is, of course, in the CBDC space. I would say China right now is working with UAE and Central Bank of UAE and also BIS to explore the international cooperation part of CBDC. I think that's definitely worth watching. And the second thing is Libra, or which is now called DM. I guess everyone is paying close attention to this field right now, because Libra or DM claims to provide financial services to those who are unbanked or underbanked. And of course, some people say that the goal is to replace the traditional financial system. Well, it might subject to debate, but I think it's definitely worth watching, and it's a new phenomenon. The third one, I would say, is Sandbox. Not a specific project in one country, but Sandbox was first proposed by UK Cabinet Office. I think Sandbox is a great example to show that how regulators can work with industry participants to create a safer place for innovation. And I think many countries right now are exploring their own version of Sandbox, either regulatory sandbox, some are industry sandbox. I think that's also worth paying attention to.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's great. Thank you very much. That's good. And now, Ava?
Yes, actually, I'm fascinated by the specific example that Marcelo mentioned, so I'm adding it to my favorite list right now. I think that's brilliant, and I was not aware of that. I'm agnostic in terms of the very specific kind of company or case, but I have a list of favorite areas, and as discussed for and they are all around either access or transaction cost. And so access to finance, as we discussed earlier, is for me pretty much on the top of the list. And there are various very interesting efforts. I'm agnostic, frankly, at this point, in terms of which one. I think the jury is still out, which one will be most effective. And I think we need to keep a close eye on this space and see, what works, what doesn't work, who does it work for. So then there needs to be some ongoing analytics done and see how these solutions work. The next one for me is really access to markets and various marketplace efforts that make it easier for small businesses to access market opportunities or even value chains in this complex global economy. Supply chains. Once again, the supply chain based solutions are very much around access to markets, and in particular in the supply chain space, the solutions that are related to food security in particular, I think are particularly impactful and powerful, because it is in this globalized era where a lot of the smaller sized producers in terms of agriculture and food systems have been left behind. They can really open up some market access opportunities for those producers. Smart contracts is kind of a no-brainer that relates to all of this. As I mentioned earlier, I think there are some efforts in the education area, which I find particularly exciting. Many of them are early stage. So once again, the jury is still out, which one of these will be most effective. But in general, the kinds of solutions that allow for people to have these blockchain-based proofs that they have taken certain classes. So often people do enroll in educational efforts where they end up not having anything in hand. They are not going to get a degree or certificate or whatever at the end in kind of the traditional, conventional fashion that they can show to the job market when they are trying to get a decent job. So to the extent that their progression or any kind of accomplishment from an educational perspective, again, some kind of course or class that they have taken, can be documented on a blockchain, and they can have some kind of evidence that they can use in the job market, I think has really high potential. Most of the efforts that I'm aware of are, again, just early stage. In fact, here in Dallas, we have a very big community college system, and they are looking at some of those opportunities and options because as you might know, often people who go through the community college system, it's not uncommon for them to not finish, but just take some classes here or there, and not being able to leverage that or monetize that later on in the job market. And then the last bucket I have, which I think is very important and high potential, is in the area of property rights, and that's in particular in emerging markets. And I believe India is probably the farthest ahead. They have done some very interesting pilots when it comes to property rights. So that was kind of my list.
Cool. Yeah, good. And I think that by having the three of you, it's all very diverse perspectives. So it's good to get different opinions. The next question then is, how has the last year been during the pandemic, and has it helped to speed up digital transformation and uptake of DeFi, blockchain, CBDC related initiatives? So Jiang, how's it been for you? What's your perspective on this?
Last year, I think definitely it helped speed up digital transformation. You see, people are gradually adapting to this kind of like working from home phenomenon, and also online education becomes prevalent. In the CBDC space, like I just said, Bahamas has already issued their own version of CBDC, and China has run trials. That's all shows how people or how the industry can adapt to digital transformation quickly. And I would say there are some more developments. For example, in the NFT space, I have seen some scholars argued about the laws for NFTs. For example, one scholar argues that NFTs are, personal property, not contract, not pure intellectual property licenses, because transactions in NFTs are in the form of a sale. The law of sales of personal property should apply, and also some scholars argue that NFT will serve as a powerful grounding example of digital personal property, and it's a legal form of ownership that is both needed and has not yet been clearly established online. I think these are all the developments in the field, and showing that how it sped up the digital transformation, and people have already started thinking about the proper regulatory regime and laws, and etc. I think that's a good sign.
Okay, good. Yeah, positive. So Ava.
So my comment is not going to be as specific to blockchain or central bank digital currencies or DeFi. It's more about the last year and what it has resulted in our space, and some of the gaps that we discussed, in particular, for example, technology gap. During this COVID period, what has become, I think, very clear to a lot of people, much more so than before, that we do also have a pandemic of inequality, and the pandemic made the situation even worse. And so those who already were struggling with access to Wi-Fi, access to technology, or not having the kind of decent quality technology, disproportionately suffered. And so in some ways, this has been very tragic. In another way, I hope that it has raised enough awareness that hopefully we have more of a momentum to actually do something about it. And indirectly, therefore, I think blockchain can have a really important role to play once we focus on how to actually address some of these issues. But again, from my perspective, this period has really heightened awareness about the importance of digital inclusion and how much more work we have to do in this area.
Yeah, look, I think you're right, Ava, because lockdown is one thing, but if we didn't have connectivity as well, then we'd be in a very different place. So, Marcelo, what are your thoughts just on this last year in relation to you and this question?
Yeah, I think after that first impact, that initial shock that we all had, and a few weeks or months of adaptation to the new situation, I think in terms of digital transformation, I think was a big boost in all fronts, including blockchain, including DeFi, crypto. We see a little bit of that, or maybe a lot of that, reflecting in the prices of cryptos. Obviously, a consequence as well of all the stimulus packages by the central banks worldwide. So, which is also a consequence of the pandemic, right? So in all means, I think we did have a big boost on everything related to the thing that we're discussing here today, and digital transformation in general. I do agree with Eva that obviously there are things that are we cannot in any way say this was a good thing, was the right thing that happened, right? This was overall, like, obviously a side effect of something really bad, but we have to see the silver lining and we have to run with it. And I'll give you a little example. In Brazil, notaries, they have to, I mean, almost every document you have to notarize in a physical notary place. That is not, for example, a bank, just a teller of the bank, like you do in the States, maybe other countries too. But in Brazil, it's a very bureaucratic thing. Anytime you have a signature, you pretty much have to take it to the notary. And the notary business is very strict, also goes from father to son for several generations. So it's sort of like a oligopoly, not many players in that space. And with the pandemic, like, people couldn't do that, right? And so we saw growth of tools like ClickSign, DocuSign, and digital signatures in general, obviously not blockchain type of signatures, but regular signatures, digital signatures. But to counteract that, the Association of Notaries officers in Brazil, they created their own blockchain. So they said, okay, I mean, I'm competing now with DocuSign, I'm competing with this. What is superior to that? And they created their own, like, permission blockchain among all the notaries, and seems to be working fine. So that's just kind of a side effect of all these very unhappy phase of COVID.
I think that's a really interesting example. I mean, and we had that in Ireland too, where there were things that didn't really need to be done in person, but had always been done in person, and hopefully it's nudged some things that can be moved faster. Yeah, perfect. So I'm just reading the question in general. Banks can't support people in rural areas. How can fintechs occupy this space? So would anybody like to touch on that question? And can you see it as well? I think you can, yeah?
We can see Simon. I can
Sure.
take the first step on that one. So obviously we have a lot of rural areas and very remote areas in our country, in our region in general, and And we are already seeing that impact of fintechs going to those areas. We heard about this a lot from Africa, right? Africa also being like having the even more of a remote areas not banked, and but we do have a lot of that in our region, and we see fintechs covering the gaps that banks wouldn't normally go. Like, we don't have a lot of banks in Brazil. We have like perhaps 5 big banks that control pretty much the whole banking system, and it's very hard to compete with these banks. And they have a lot of influence over the government. They can, move their little pieces of the puzzle to make it harder for fintechs to compete with them. But once you go to markets or areas that perhaps they don't see as profitable for them, that's where we see a lot of fintechs thriving.
Perfect. Xiang?
I think different countries may have different, situations. In China, traditional banks, maybe less incentivized for them to, provide financial service to people who are in the rural areas. This is where China's central bank step in, and at least China's central bank one of the purpose to create central bank digital currency is to provide financial service who are in rural areas, because like Alipay and WeChat Pay, these two are the major key payment platforms in China, but they don't have the economic incentive to provide service to those who are in rural areas. So central bank, because it's free to use, the only thing you need is a smartphone. And according to my research, the cheapest smartphone is about like $100. And I don't think it would be a huge expenditure for local governments to provide a smartphone for people in those areas. So once you have a smartphone, then everything will be easier. The central bank can provide this financial transaction services for those people.
Yeah, look, I mean, an M-Pesa in Kenya and beyond has shown that you can do a lot. You just move around it very quickly. Ava, any thoughts?
Yes. So I love this topic, and this is an area that I've done quite a bit of research in, and it is very difficult to serve rural areas because typically your transaction size in terms of banking is small, and to reach these areas is expensive. So the transaction cost is high. And when you look at even microfinance, it's very expensive in rural areas, even when microfinance is offering products and solutions in the small transaction size that's often needed, especially considering that rural areas, especially in emerging countries, are predominantly agricultural or food system related. So the typical loan size tends to be relatively small, and therefore the interest rates that banks have to charge are high. So this is a situation where fintech just makes perfect sense. The barrier is, once again, there is the access to technology piece that Jiaying kind of spoke to a little bit. It's my experience has been that just that in and of itself, even when people get access to the technology, let's say in this case a smartphone, that does not necessarily mean that they will be using some of these services. So there are additional capacity building, educational activities that have to go alongside. And so from my perspective, I think there is a natural opportunity in rural areas for fintech to partner with supply chains. And so especially when you look at rural areas being predominantly agricultural or food system related, the role of supply chains and value chains is really important, whether you're thinking about the agricultural input providers, fertilizers, seeds, etc., and them naturally serving these areas, or whether you're thinking about the companies that are sourcing through their supply chain certain products from these areas. There are companies that do business regularly in these rural areas. So there is an opportunity to piggyback on that. And in my research, actually, what's very interesting is farmers tend to trust these companies that they have been doing business with more with respect to financial services than some of the more traditional financial intermediaries. So it's very common for these companies, whether it is the suppliers of input or the companies sourcing from these areas, to offer some kind of value chain financing. And that's not necessarily something that these companies like to do. They don't make money on it, but it's just part of what they have to do in order to empower these farmers or small businesses to be able to do what needs to be done with respect to the company's operation. So from my perspective, I think there is a very obvious and natural opportunity for fintech to partner with these companies who are interested in seeing these farmers or small businesses in the rural areas or households to get financing. And therefore, but it's not necessarily part of their own business. They are just doing it out of necessity. So a partnership with fintech could help improve the trust factor, could help make sure that these entities are more trusting of this new technology-based financial solutions that are being offered to them. And these companies are already in the business of providing some kind of technical assistance and know-how in rural areas anyways, in most cases. So to piggyback on that and to provide the additional educational and technical assistance activities that is necessary with respect to the fintech piece is much easier than to create those programmatic efforts on a standalone basis.
Yeah, look, I mean, and I think that goes back to the whole point that it's a service that you offer and you help people in a variety of ways. So there is perhaps some business there, but it also makes sense. I know we're close on time, so I was just going to quickly ask you about NFTs. Do you feel it's helped raise awareness? Is it something you would buy yourself, or would you make one of yourself? So, Jiang, what are your thoughts?
Well, to answer the first question, I think it definitely helped to raise awareness of wider issues. For example, I just mentioned that scholars have been discussing the legal nature of NFTs, if it's a personal property or contract or IP license, and the discussion of what law should apply and whether it could be the next frontier in trading in the art, especially in the art area. I think these are all the awareness. Second question, if I will buy one, yeah, I'm still studying this, and probably yes, because for example, in 2017, I started trading like Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies. The purpose is to learning by doing. So as I do this kind of research, I have to get to know how platform works, and then different parties get involved. So if I want to have a deeper understanding of NFTs, yes, I probably will buy one, but not gambling though.
Yeah, but I think you make sense. I think the best way to really understand crypto is to have gone through the pain points, the risks, the whole process. And if you haven't, then it's far harder to speak negatively about it. So yeah, Marcelo.
Not to say I haven't bought anything, but I did something. I put a bid on a CryptoPunk little
cool. Okay.
stick. I didn't get it. It was way above my bid. But I just play with. I tried. I think I was late in that game. I wish I was doing that 2 years ago. But yeah, I think just for fun. It's just like anything related to collectibles, or in a more like sophisticated way, like art in general. I think it's a positive to have this. Because we do know it's hard for artists in general to sell their art. And now we have a new way, which just like in crypto or DeFi, sort of you have a chance, not that you're going to do that right away, we have a chance to eliminate or reduce the intermediaries, or at least take the concentration from a few, let's say, big galleries or art dealers to, kind of smaller platforms, smaller websites. It's not what's happening now. We see already a concentration in this platforms like Rarible, OpenSeas, Nifty, and so forth. But for sure, just like with crypto exchanges, if this goes well, we're gonna have a lot more of these platforms, and a lot of them are gonna be niche based or smaller or very segmented. So I think in general it's positive. Obviously, avoid the hype and buy like a little pixel for millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. But in general, I think there's going to be good things coming out of it, and who knows, maybe there are lessons there for others, for other like things, other segments, other sectors, from these little playful things that we're seeing happening now with the collectibles.
Yeah, look, I think so. It's a bit like, a lot of things were innovated in pornography first in terms of charging for content, and then it gets rolled out to other areas. And like you say, it's very hard for artists to sell their work, and we're online so much. So therefore, why wouldn't you have collectibles? Ava?
I'm fascinated by NFTs. I also am really interested in the art space. I can only echo what Marcelo already said about artists and their ongoing struggle to monetize their work and survive. And I do believe that artists have such an important contribution. So we definitely want them to survive. And this, maybe this is a great way. I have not come to the point where I would be too tempted to buy one of them, but that might change. And I really don't have enough expertise to opine on it a lot more in terms of the direction of where this may be heading. But I do find it very fascinating, and I'm following the developments with curiosity.
Cool. Yeah, I think so. So we're almost out of time. Jiaying, any final takeaways?
Final takeaway. I do want to quickly talk about and the broader impact of technology, either like our topic suggests NFT or blockchain or whatever, artificial intelligence technology, the impact on the work of professionals. And I think a lot of professional white-collar workers always made a mistake by thinking that their work can never be replaced by machines, by AI, or by blockchain, whatever technology it is, because these technologies or AI cannot think or cannot feel, so they cannot exercise judgment or be empathetic. And I think this is one of the biggest mistake or misconception that I have ever seen. I think I would like to introduce a book, Richard Susskind's book called Online Core and the Future of Justice. He called this kind of thinking an AI fallacy, or maybe technological fallacy. It's a view that takes the only way, think the only way to get machine or technology outperform human will somehow mimic or replicate human reasoning. And I think this mistake takes a very excessively human-centric view of technology or AI. And he gives a lot of good examples, and I suggest you take a look at this book. That's it.
Okay, thank you. So Ava, any final takeaway?
Sure. We have done a study looking at best practices and scaled solutions in the climate smart inclusive economy space. And one of the things we found is those solutions predominantly consisted of partnerships, and often partnerships of strange bedfellows, large corporate partnering with the very innovative social enterprise, but that partnership allowed for the impact to get scaled and the reach to be scaled. And that's the final point I would love to make. I think this is a space where we need these partnerships, and I think we need to be open to who those partners might be. They may not be always the ones that we think of. And so I believe that forging partnerships and building coalitions is going to be really important for us to be able to scale the impact of these technological solutions, at least in my space, again, looking at more the environmental and social impact side of it.
Awesome, and very concisely said. So I'm going to say thanks, and then thank you to all our speakers, and then Marcelo is just going to give us his final thoughts and takeaway as well. So over to you, Marcelo.
Thanks, Simon. So for a final takeaway, I think we've come a long way with this blockchain crypto thing from the times that this all started with Satoshi Nakamoto's paper such a long time ago, over 10 years now. And a lot has been built, a lot has failed as part of the process. And we still don't know exactly how it's going to be like in the next 10 years. But I think just having a panel like this with people from different parts of the globe, sort of speaking the same blockchain language, already makes me positive, makes me confident that, I mean, there's something much bigger. In our day-to-day, we are a lot of times just so focused on, the nuts and bolts, the, small bug that happen in your smart contracts deployment, things like that, that it's good to sort of take, a few steps back and look at the macro view and see how things are developing. A panel like this is very good, in my opinion, for this type of stuff. So thanks everybody for this great panel.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Look forward to the next talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.